Earlier today, Skyrim got yet another new update. This is about 1 GB in size on just about all platforms, and this update was focused around the recent release of Creations, aka this new paid mod system in Skyrim. So we'll look at what's actually changed in the game as a result of this update, basically all of it being focused around this new creation system. But even further, we have to highlight some of the growing frustrations from the community because, frankly, they're getting fed up with these Skyrim updates. But were you also aware that a brand new Elder Scrolls game came out today? Sadly, no, it doesn't actually look like this. This is just modded Skyrim. But there is an incredibly interesting story on what is going on here, as we just saw the official announcement around the Elder Scrolls castles. And we'll talk about that more a little bit later in this video. But I do have some great news. You can go to Hawaii next week. That thanks to today's video sponsor, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, dropping on January 26th for basically all the platforms. But there is a catch. Because yeah, Hawaii's expensive, you'll need a job, whether that be slicing down enemies as a samurai, the tranquil life of a fisherman, or hey, even just beating down Yakuza with a neon sign. And if you pre-order, you'll even get the Heroes Booster Pack and Special Job Set for this latest entry in the Yakuza franchise.
Welcome to paradise.
Aloha! All right!
I can show you around now. But there's a few things you need to learn before we have a good time.
You can have a little fun with some friends. And even pick up a new skill. Whatever you do, be careful. Even paradise can have its secrets.
You trying to tell me there are Yakuza in Hawaii?
Not exactly something you'd find in a guidebook, is it?
Keep your friends close. And your enemies closer.
Name's Dwight.
Nice to meet you.
Take cover!
But then looking back at this new Skyrim update, many of the previous UI or even sometimes crashing issues associated with this new menu have now been resolved. So if you are somebody who is using this menu to browse for mods, whether that be free or paid, the entire experience should be a lot smoother and more usable now. Controller users even got some slight control changes, which does seem like a nice quality of life improvement. And for those of you playing on Steam, DRM is back for Skyrim. With the original Creations update, Bethesda accidentally broke the Steam integration, so this overlay wouldn't work, achievements weren't being tracked, and there was no DRM requirement, so you could temporarily launch Skyrim without having Steam installed at all if you wanted to. But of course now all of that is fixed and back, although you still are not able to earn achievements when using mods or creations. Over the last month, there have been some general updates to the Creations program. There were some pricing changes on these bundles, so everything got a slight price hike, as well as many of the creations themselves did receive updates. But with this specific Skyrim update that launched earlier today, there is not any new paid content to purchase or really any notable pieces of new content at all. This really was just bug fixes, and very specifically bug fixes to this interface. Although all of this comes with one very notable side effect, mods breaking will likely be the largest change to come from this update for many of you, predominantly impacting PC users who will likely have a variety of their mods being broken now. If you are playing on console, you should be largely fine and can immediately continue to play, but on PC, if you just allowed your game to update, it's incredibly likely that some of your mods have broken, especially if you're using script extender based mods. The Skyrim script extender itself is currently outdated, as well as the address library has not updated yet. In all likelihood, we'll see updates to these either later today or in the next 48 hours or so, but then there's likely going to be several more mods that need to be updated into the aftermath of this over the next week or so. Thankfully here you do have options. If you want to play Skyrim right now, you can downgrade to one of the older versions. I'll have links down below with some of the various tools, or you can just play on GOG, which has built-in version control and downgrading. A nice byproduct of this update is now the Steam and GOG builds of the game are identical. Previously, the GOG version was in this weird middle version, but thankfully now it's resolved. And if you are interested, I'll have a link to buy Skyrim on GOG with my affiliate code down below. And these updates for Skyrim have started to become into a larger problem for the community, because it's all just really a headache and leading to more community segregation. Following the release of the Creations update last year, lots of Skyrim players were just frustrated, partially because Bethesda was once again attempting to monetize the mod, but also because in their efforts to do so, they've led to a bunch of other mods breaking. You release this free Creations thing, thing with paid mods on it, but then of course the script extender breaks as that update does come out. And something that's really stemmed from these updates consistently messing with things is Skyrim versions are becoming increasingly separated. One of the most common pieces of advice when asking about how to deal with these updates to the game is to downgrade. This oftentimes to either version 1.6.640, the version before Creations, or even further back to 1.5.97, the version before Anniversary Edition from several years ago. But then even further, of course, there's going to be a bunch of people playing on the first Creations update from December, and even some others who are playing on the latest Creations update from earlier today. And you can see from this recent poll on the Skyrim mods subreddit, right now the Skyrim modding community is quite evenly split using several distinct versions of the game. And it really just makes the whole process a bit messier. I'm sure some of you are watching right now who find all of these versions and complexity just a bit difficult to follow, when all you really want to do is download some cool mods for Skyrim. And even on the side of mod authors, having to now support several different versions of the game just adds to the headache and overall workload. And unfortunately, it isn't quite that simple either. There are a lot of users out there who will just say to go to version 1.5.97. Almost all of your mods will work there, but you may miss a few as some mods have never been released for this now several-year-old version of Skyrim. Alternatively, you could switch to 1.6.64, which has almost everything. There are just a few mods that never updated up to that build, but you will need to download one particular mod for certain things to work, or update to one of the new versions. But then some of these older mods aren't working yet, so you'll have to find replacements, or you'll be consistently dealing with broken mods as each new update comes out and breaks them once again. And I think even from this brief description, you could start to see how this will very quickly turn somebody off from wanting to deal with modding the game altogether. And as I mentioned there's also just the issue of some mods not being updated yet. If you want to play on the newest version of Skyrim, you'll definitely have some large-scale mods that you can't use. Partially, this is because modders have just moved on. Bethesda updating the game periodically 10 years after release is pretty rough. You have to come back time and time again to get things working once again, and some people just can't be bothered. But particularly with this Creation update that launched back in December, this brought larger changes and overhauls to the game, leading for some mods to require larger updates. The dress library alone didn't cover everything. So some of the very ambitious mods that even came out in 2023 no longer work on the newest version of Skyrim, like Skyclimb. But there's also a bunch of quality of life mods like Quick Loot or the Compass Navigation overhaul that have never been updated, or even some of the more technical mods that many consider essential like No Grass and Objects or the NetScript framework. To be clear, none of those mods even updated to the Creations version released in December, let alone the even newer update to drop earlier today. Although with that in mind, I think a lot of people hear your mods are broken and do immediately apply that to all of the mods. As it stands right now, the vast majority of Skyrim mods out there have been updated to the Creations build of the game. Not necessarily updated for the latest build that released earlier today, but to the version that was released in December. So if you want to stick there and wait for things to update, you very much so can do so. You might have to find a few replacements for singular mods, but largely you'll be okay. But even with that in mind, it seems like many in the modding community are choosing to stay on some of the older builds of the game, and that's for good reason. Simplicity and safety. Who knows how many more updates Skyrim's going to get in 2024, even 25 and 26. How many more times this year will you have to deal with putting your game on hold for a couple of days while you wait for certain things to update? There's a lot of people that just don't want to deal with that at all, and as such are sticking to older versions. Although, even with that in mind, there is at least one genuine and very impactful change that did come from the Creations update that is a consideration here, as there was a surprise increase in size limits for ESL files with that update. ESL files came from Creation Club, and their main benefit is instead of counting towards that age-old 255 mod limit, ESL files have their own separate and much higher limit. So effectively, it's almost like you're using a free mod slot. But there is a downside. ESL files have limited space, and as such are only for smaller mods. Some of the largest mods still will have to count towards that limit, but thankfully with the Creations update, the space limit for ESL files was doubled. This giving mod authors way more space to work with and just a lot more flexibility. So while this is great for modding capabilities, this is also somewhat problematic, as if you try and load one of these larger ESL files on one of the older, downgraded versions of the game, like this one from before the Creations update, your game will immediately crash. So this would could be an issue. New mods come out using the extra space, but since you're on the older version, you can actually download some new mods. But thankfully, Skyrim modding is awesome, so almost immediately Nukem backported this change to the older versions of Skyrim with the mod backported extended ESL support. So all of the benefits of expanded space from the Creations update, but while sticking to your older and protected version of Skyrim. And even some of the most popular mods out there will require this. There were some other changes around plugin versioning with this past update. So if you download something like the unofficial Skyrim patch, but you're using it for an older version of the game, you'll very likely need Nukem's mod to not immediately crash on launch. So as it stands right now, Skyrim really finds itself in a weird and kind of uncomfortable position. It's not like the game's outright broken. It's not like free mods are going away forever, but the community is definitely growing increasingly frustrated with Bethesda and the consistent attempts to monetize mods, which in turn leads to a lot of headaches for those modding for free, particularly on PC. And even further, the entire launch of this program has just kind of been odd. We get this initial batch of paid mods and of course applications opening up for more to join this verified creators program, but nothing else has actually happened. As far as I can tell, there are no new verified creators ever since this has actually launched. Bethesda did describe how they're going to be working through applications over the course of January though. But even further, there also have been just no news about more releases. Are we getting another batch of paid mods before this summer at any point in Q1 of 2024? It really feels like they kind of just launched this thing and then immediately went silent. It's almost like Bethesda didn't want to be too loud about it because they knew it would be controversial, but then in turn, for people who actually are kind of interested to see what happens next, they've also just been quiet. I legitimately have no idea when we might see more paid mods released for Skyrim. It could be March, it could be June, or who knows, it could even be August. But then also, looking at this brand new Elder Scrolls release, earlier today Bethesda finally shared new info on the Elder Scrolls Castles on Twitter, saying, "We're excited to finally share the Elder Scrolls Castles, our new mobile game from the team behind Fallout Shelter. The team has been hard at work on it for the last few years and we absolutely adore it. In Castles, you'll build your own dynasty where every day in our world is a year in the game's world. Citizens are born, they die, rulers change, and can be betrayed. This soft launch is one of the first steps as we get your feedback and make changes before it launches worldwide. Let us know what you think and pre-register here." And to be clear, this is an early soft launch that is currently just in the Philippines. So if you are located in the Philippines, you could seemingly play this game right now. But for the rest of us, it seems like we'll be waiting until a later date in 2024, which is currently not known. And honestly, this entire castle situation is pretty bizarre, and I have no idea what happened here. This is the first time Bethesda has officially acknowledged the Elder Scrolls Castles, but all the way back in September, just a couple of weeks after Starfield launched, so did the Elder Scrolls Castles in a closed beta on the Play Store. It was just literally there one day. There are a ton of videos and articles out right now of users playing this one, and actually many have been playing this for quite a while now. But at the time of the original launch, there was no official communication from Bethesda, but for whatever reason, they are choosing now as a point to start communicating about this game. Sadly, most of you watching again cannot play the game itself, and it does have a listed release date of December 2024, although I suspect this is just a placeholder for at some point in 2024. And in reality, it's really just a different take on the same formula as Fallout Shelter. There's a few new mechanics like this dynasty system, but overall it seems like it's a very similar game to Fallout Shelter, and if you enjoyed that one, you'll probably have a good few hours of fun with this one. And it's really no surprise they're releasing this. Fallout Shelter makes Bethesda a ton of money, so obviously they're just bringing that same formula to the Elder Scrolls. In the past, we have seen Todd Howard talking about this upcoming mobile project that he was particularly excited for. A lot of the speculation at the time was he was referring to a different mobile game known as Spy Team, which they currently hold a trademark for. So maybe he was talking about Castles, or maybe there's another mobile project ongoing at Bethesda that could be releasing at some point. But either way, that is the story of Skyrim's most recent update and some of the lingering impacts that Creations have had on the game. If you're interested in more on Bethesda's giant 2024 plans though, check out this video.